Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Westland Public Library program, Give Grief a Voice. Welcoming today is a number of panelists. Lisa will be our moderator today. Jessica Jones, Vanessa Smith, and Justin Carroll all have works of art in our exhibition this month going on throughout the course of March. It's also called Give Grief a Voice. If you haven't had the opportunity to attend, I highly encourage it. I also recommend that you check out our YouTube page where I've had the opportunity to talk to Vanessa as well as Diane from the project and talk to them about their process of creating the artwork, what grief means to them, and the voices that we give to those who are deceased. I want to also encourage you to come to the library on April 1st. We have a wonderful program going on called Remembrance and Memorialization. This is a discussion on how to memorialize, remember, and honor our loved ones in our death-denying culture. We will be exploring legacy projects, which are unique creations in which individuals can pass on their emotional and spiritual inheritance to their loved ones. We also look at ritual and traditions that can help bring meaning to the time and loss and support coping and healing throughout the end of life journey. This is done by the End of Life Doula, or Evening Star End of Life Doula Services, who we've had the opportunity to interview, and that's on our YouTube page. They've done a great job at kind of giving you representation in your end of life choices. That was a lot to take in. A lot of this information is on our library website. If you just go to westlandoregon.gov/library or just type in Westland Oregon Public Library and we will come up right away. That's it from me. I want to hand this over to Lisa and thank you all for joining us this evening. I know that it's kind of dreary. The weather might have tempted you outside, but I'm glad you took the moment to chat with me. I do want to mention that if you want to pose a question to any of our panelists, please put that in the Q&A feature, which is down below. I should be able to see chat, but not the rest of the participants will be able to see the chat. So again, use Q&A just in case you want everybody to see it. Take it away, Lisa.
Hello, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for our artists, panelists for being here. I've got 4 questions for the artists, but look forward to hearing from those of you who are watching. If you have any questions, we'll get to those hopefully as well. So my name is Lisa. I live in Southeast Portland and I'm a writer. I've been a writer for the Give Grief a Voice project from the beginning, so 5 years now. And I just really enjoy the process of working with families, meeting people, and hearing the stories of their beautiful children. So I'm going to do a quick introduction of each of the panelists, and then after I introduce each of you on the panel, if each of you could please respond in one word, the answer to this question: what's one word you would use to describe what it's been like being involved with the Give Grief a Voice project? I know it's hard to just say one word, but we can do it, and then we might circle back around to it later. So the only rule is that you can't use the same word as someone else used before you. So to make it easier on me, I'll go first, and that word is life-changing. First up, we have Justin Carroll. Justin's based in Portland, Oregon, has a background in theater, music, and teaching. He has returned to visual arts as part of his recovery from a brain injury suffered in 2015. His work is now primarily abstract painting with acrylics. Justin, thanks for joining us. What's one word you would use to describe what it's like being an artist with the Give Grief a Voice program?
Healing.
Healing. All right. Next, I'm happy to introduce Vanessa Smith. Vanessa is an artist and graphic designer located in Corvallis, Oregon. While more traditional art techniques, including painting and drawing, have been prominent in most of her life, she ended up choosing a career in graphic design. She most enjoys creating artwork inspired by nostalgic emotion, bold colors, children's stories, and mythology. Vanessa, what's one word you would use to describe what it's like being an artist with the Give Grief a Voice project?
Well, Jason took mine, so I need to think of another one. So I would probably say it just rewarding.
Rewarding. Great. Yes. Okay. Jessica Johns is a fine pen and ink and watercolor artist with her beautiful art behind her right now. She's always been passionate about art and using it to bring joy to others. As a former nurse and a mother now, herself, she considers it an honor to work for this project. Jessica, what's one word you would use to describe what it's been like as an artist with the Give Grief a Voice project?
Inspiring.
Inspiring. Awesome. Okay. So the first question I have for all of you is about your process. So for those of you listening who might not know a lot about the project, the way that it works is a writer and someone else from the project, usually the project's founder, Amanda Drews, sits down with a family who has applied to the program to be a part of it. And we interview the family and then ghostwrite their story. After the story has been approved by the family, the story gets sent to these beautiful artists. So my question is, what do you do when you get the story? I know as a writer for the project, I have my own process, and having done it for so long, because it is such a heavy topic, I know I have some self-care strategies included in that, and some sort of rituals that I use to help guide me as I'm writing the story, and then as I let the story go, right, by sending it to the family. So I was just wondering if each of you could talk about a piece that you've done for the Give Grief a Voice project and walk us through the process of how you made it. Jessica, would you like to start?
Sure. I'll start. So this is I'm going into my third season as part of this awesome community of artists. And my process for all of my kiddos that I get to paint for, I sit down and I give myself the space and the time to make sure I'm in like a good headspace and in a, it's a good day. It's, I have to kind of mentally prepare myself because it is very heavy, right? This is, someone's everything, right? These stories are just so deep, and, it's their family's story. So I always read through it first, and I let myself have all the range of emotions. I have my tissue boxes. I usually, there's usually a lot of tears because you can really feel like, it's gut wrenching to kind of experience the family story the first time. After I do that, I'm able to kind of center myself and look at it with different eyes. I kind of let the sadness and the grief go, first, and then I'm able to look at the happy points that a family has put in there, because, we're remembering their beautiful children. And, I love the points that they put in there about their kids, loved this, or they always smiled when I, had their favorite stuffed animal, or, really can connect with the child through the eyes of their parents. And I go through and I always highlight all the things that really jump out to me. And I get I'm a very intuitive artist. So certain things will just pop out off the page for me, and I'll get, full body shivers and just kind of that wave of, feeling and emotion that it guides me to where I need to, what I need to do and paint for the family. I had, just this last season, a sweet family who lost their child pretty soon after birth. And the beautiful imagery that they put in there was about being at the beach and about, being there as a family. And they knew that that they weren't going to have a lot of time with their kiddo. And so really, I try to put myself in that spot and picture the beautiful things that they can remember and incorporate that into the pieces.
Awesome. Thank you. Justin?
Well, I could say just basically ditto. I similarly try to create space and time to take in the story. It's not something that you can just dial up on email and run through at any time. It's something that I really want to give meaningful attention to and be able to digest, because it is very difficult to read. And also I'm cognizant that I'm just, I'm an observer who gets to read it and not live it. And that weighs on me too. So I just try to remember that while I'm reading it, that this is a real story of a real family that's going through this right now. And I usually will try to digest that for a few days and come back to it and read it again, and then do just what Jessica said, highlight some of the things, some of the imagery that sort of strikes me as is particularly meaningful, or like maybe I get an intuitive hit on this image, seems like it really speaks to the family and could be great in a piece. And then I'll soon after start to just sketch some ideas. And from that, and this is only I'm going to my third year like Jessica. So in the past 2 years, I've done some sketches and just tried to create a composition based on the stuff that I've gleaned from the story. And proceed from there. And like Jessica, I'm a very intuitive painter too. So even though I've got a pretty solid composition in terms of, what the images are, I really kind of follow my nose when it comes to colors and textures and things like that, to see, what's going to be harmonious for this particular piece, for this family, for this child, and try to let the painting form itself from there. So that's my process.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Well, I think Justin and Jessica both really, said it. I think that we have a lot of similar process. I do, like Jessica, make sure that I'm in the right headspace, and make sure, that, my physical environment and everything is in tune with preparing me to really kind of set myself in a different space to understand, to read through and understand, try to understand what these families are going through. I have experienced a loss myself, so it brings back a lot of my own feelings and emotions that I went through during that time. And after I read through the story, I kind of make note of key things that I see, whether, it's a particular flower or a tree, or, some sort of setting or an animal. If it's a book or a song, I have purchased the books and read them. I've added the songs to my Spotify list, and I give them grace as they're still on my Spotify list, and they run through and I listen to them, and they take me back to that moment. And I just really try to feel emotionally the connection with the family, and understand their grief and how it's affecting them, and how I can best honor that with my artwork. It's a very tricky thing to go through, because I feel like there's a fine line of honoring some, the grief that this family is feeling. And then, it can also kind of be taken a little in a different direction that might kind of not come across to them with the artist's intent. And so you really kind of have to play with a lot of different ideas and emotions and references to be sure that you're soft with your approach, or at least for me, that you're soft with your approach, but pretty straightforward with the intent of it all. It's a different process than I've done with any of my other, artworks or commissions. And as Justin and Jessica, this is also my third season going into this, and it has been the most wonderful, rewarding, and inspirational art program that I've been involved with in my career. And yeah, it's just wonderful. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I relate to so many of the things all of you said, even though I'm working with words and not images. When you were talking, Vanessa, it reminded me of a time that so when I say I ghostwrite the parent stories, I mean, I literally just sort of organize their words and give it back to them. So it's just, I consider myself kind of an arranger. And one year I had a family write back after they received their story and say, well, it's just so sad. It's too sad. You made it so sad. And I remember thinking that, I mean, that, it was, how much of that was the writer and how much of that was the speaker, and where's the tension there between honoring the truth of the story and also what the parents are hoping to experience as a part of the project. So I remember kind of feeling at a loss for how to respond, but ultimately I wrote back and I said, if you have other things that you want to add, right? Perhaps there's a memory that you didn't tell about in the interview, or a picture that you want to describe. I am more than happy to add that into the piece. And sure enough, a week or so later, the mother wrote back and said that it was actually really hard for her to think about how to change the tone of the story, and that ultimately she realized that it's just a sad story. And it kind of broke her heart, but she was saying that it also kind of just helped her. It was validating that she had such grief and was feeling so sad. And then to have the sadness kind of reflected back to her was a validation of the grief that she was feeling. So anyway, she had a little anecdote that we then added into the story. But yeah, when you were talking about just honoring the story and being honest as the writer and the artist, but also wanting to be soft and open to their family's reaction. And I also have a Spotify list of oftentimes in the interviews brief, parents will talk about songs that they either remember listening to with their children or that their children loved, or that they have listened to a lot since the child's death. And so I just have a whole Give Grief a Voice playlist, and I'll listen to the songs while I'm writing as well. So yeah, that's another common thread. So I'd love each of you, Vanessa, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but to talk about how your experience as an artist with the project has affected the art you make outside of the project. If it has at all, maybe it hasn't, but if it has, how? And if not, why do you think that is? Do you find that you're creating complete stuff that looks completely different for this project, or is it influencing the work you're doing outside of the project? Just interested to hear about that. Vanessa, would you start? We'll just go in reverse. Yeah. Vanessa, Jessica.
Sure. So with working with the Give Grief a Voice program, it takes up a lot of time each painting. And so far, the past 2 seasons, I've had 3 families each season. And so I'm working on 3 paintings at the same time. And then in my professional career, I am a graphic designer and an illustrator. And so I've moved all of that. Well, of course, the graphic design is all digital. But I found myself doing more digital illustrations for, the illustration work that I do as well. And painting to me is such a personal thing. It's just such a release of my own emotions. And so I do paintings sometimes here and there more for myself. But really, I was actually just saying it the other day that I'm really looking forward to working with families again this season, because that is I've kind of almost dedicated that to my time to release that. That's where I dedicate my painting effort. So it really has changed it, my art practice, in a way that I kind of think about and study and practice different techniques throughout the year. But I wait for the family interviews to come through to really kind of actually put brush to canvas, as they say. So, yeah.
It's hard to talk about for me how this changes me as an artist, is changing me as an artist. I think that there's such a temptation to make, my art, my ideas, what I want to express. We're surrounded by a lot of emphasis of that in our culture. Follow your passion, express yourself. None of that is bad necessarily, but it can get very self-referential, and that's a two-edged sword, I think. And so I could get real in my head about like, well, I got to create this abstract piece because I have this idea. But then Give Grief a Voice comes along, and it's like, look, there is an entire world of service beyond my little studio that I was not aware of, not plugged into, where the art that we're making can have, hopefully, an incredible impact way beyond the effort that, what little effort I'm making at home in my studio. So it's shown me just what art can be, what art can do, what we can use art for, and what my, whatever skills I have can be used for, rather than just in the service of whatever vision I have. That's been a really great life lesson for me, and it's ongoing. To say, okay, well, look, the best kind of art is art that helps other people and serves people. And you can do that in a gallery. You can put up a really great piece and people can come in and appreciate it and maybe bring it home, and it does that. But this is orders of magnitude different, because if all goes well, the piece that is made gives a family an opportunity to have a new memory or new memories, and to be reminded of good things, and can hopefully enhance their experience, instead of, be a reminder of negative things. I'm speculating here, but that's my hope. And it's incredibly powerful. I feel really grateful that I get to do it, and it's super hard, and I'm glad that I've encouraged myself to do this, to face it, because it's a real challenge to take on this responsibility, to be frank, but super rewarding.
So for me, I'm actually quite new to exploring art as a profession, I never want to call it a job, because it's too fun and important to be called a job for me. But the Grief Project came into my life at a very pivotal time. I had taught myself how to paint. I'd never painted before. I used to be a nurse. I've done lots of things in my life, but I had never been an artist until just a short time before I met Amanda, and she chatted with me. So the project really gave me that, like tap on the shoulder of, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You have a purpose, and you're, like, yes, I paint lots of, like flowers and, just doodles and, do lots of things. But when it comes to painting for the families and for honoring these children, it really gives me that, like, yeah, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. I came into this exactly when I was supposed to. And, and instead of feeling like, sometimes it can just feel meaningless. Like, I don't know, who needs this picture of a shamrock, right? I painted that this week. Like what? This isn't important to somebody, but I also see all this stuff I do outside of, painting for the families as practice, right? I do that every day to get better, so I can do well by my families that I paint for. So it's all pretty amazing when it comes together, and you just kind of get that little, like, yeah, doing what I'm supposed to be doing for who I'm supposed to be, doing it for.
Yeah, for those of you who've seen the work hanging in the library, those are reproductions of the work that the artists have made, and in fact, we give the original pieces to the families to keep. So that was born out of Amanda hearing from families over and over that they just wished they could have a new memory or a new picture of their child. Of course, parents know the feeling of, putting up pictures that their children have drawn, pictures of their children on vacation. And bereaved parents also are often grieve not having a new memory to put up on their wall. So these paintings that are paintings and that are done for the families are given to the families. And then we've created reproductions for the gallery show that is touring around currently, and it's currently at the Westland Library. So yeah, I think I also like the artists can relate. I think I'm someone who is, I believe stories can change lives. And I think that about fiction. I think that about nonfiction. But per the mission of this project, the mission of this project is to change grief culture in America, to make it no longer taboo to talk about loss, grief, and death. And of course, we all know that the death of a child upends the natural order of things, right? As when you have a child, you assume you will outlive, or that child will outlive you. And so the death of a child is an upending of that natural order. And for a long time in our culture, it's been a suppressed topic, too difficult to discuss. No one knows what to say. There's nothing to say. And this is a project that says, nope, there's a lot to say, and we have to start talking about it because it's happening, and it is healing to discuss and to know. And these stories, one of the questions we always ask the families is, what's the best thing someone has said or done for you? So ultimately, we hope to collect the stories and the pieces of art in a book. And we want that book to be spread wide and far and help change the culture of grief in our country. So this next question is from Amanda. Actually, she was hoping to sort of touch on the mission tonight. And so this question speaks to it. How has this project influenced how you talk to other people about loss and grief? It doesn't have to be a bereaved parent, because I think, like I was saying, it upends the natural order of things. But when you're grieving someone, anyone, it feels like an upending of the natural order of things, no matter, what loss you're experiencing. So I think a lot of the things that we learn from the families can transfer to not just bereaved parents, but to anyone who's grieving the loss of someone they love. So how has this project influenced how you talk to others about loss and grief? Let's start with Justin.
It's a great question. I'm not sure I've had the opportunity to talk with many people about grief since getting involved. But my I can't even call it my understanding. I guess my awareness of what this grief must be like to feel and experience. I have this little tiny glimpse of it, and its power is incredible. I can't believe how I really am in awe of what these families withstand, to be perfectly frank. That it just, having talked to some of the families, having read a lot of the stories, and just being a part of some of the Give Grief a Voice events, it's pretty overwhelming. And it has made me think about grief as we like to think, I think, of grief as something that, we can move through, we could put aside, it's an emotional experience, and we have some control over our emotions, etc. But my sense of this type of grief is that it's its own thing. It's its own energy, and it can be completely consuming. And I was not aware of that kind of human experience before this. So I'm a little chagrined to say that I'd had no appreciation of it, and I feel grateful to have some sense of what this experience is like. and I'm grateful to do some small thing to try to help out with it. But I think as I have opportunities to talk about grief in the future, I think the main thing I'm going to want to do is try to listen and hold space for people, because I think I don't know anything about their experience, really. And if I can be a good listener and try to hold space, and maybe take the opportunity to ask them about their loved one in a way that's, hopefully safe for them. I've learned that from this program too, that parents would love to be asked about their kids. Some of them, I've read several of them say, we'd love to talk about our child, and people don't ask. So those are some of the things that I've taken away so far.
Awesome. Yeah, Vanessa.
So Justin, when you said listening and holding space, that's really important, and it's the listening that is really, kind of the key that I think a lot of people kind of miss when talking about grief. And I say that because, as I mentioned before, I had experienced my own, and I remember during that time, whenever I would talk about my grief, I would get multiple reactions. I would get, some people would say, oh, we don't want to think about that right now. Let's move on to a happier topic. And it would just inside, outside, I'd be like, oh, okay. But inside, I would just feel myself getting enraged because, darn it, no, I need to talk about this. I want to talk about this. And, and I can only talk to myself or my dogs so much before, I just need somebody to listen. And then on the other side of that, you get a lot of people who compare, who have also experienced something themselves. And they'll say, oh, well, you'll be okay. The same thing happened to me. And so what I've learned about speaking about grief is understanding that even if my experience is identical, physically, medically, everything, to what somebody else went through, it's worlds different from the way it is perceived within me and within them. And so there is no room to compare. So I have learned in just going through what I went through, and then also working with this program, being an artist with this program, and reading with the families, is to really understand that nobody's situation, nobody's experience is like anybody else's. And so because of that, it really is important to listen and hold space.
Yeah, if you imagine that everyone could go through this project, the varying art that would come out of that, right? Even someone who had an exact same experience as someone else, the pieces would look completely different. And so I think that's a way to kind of visualize what you're talking about, that even if they sound the same or look the same on paper, they're not at all if you were to turn them into a piece of art.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, I have been around a lot of death and a lot of grief. I was an ICU nurse, and so I was there for, through that many, many times with my patients' families. And I was quite young. I was in my 20s when I, went through that with a lot of people. And it was like, it was pretty terrifying, right? Like it was a very big deal, and kind of something that we just didn't talk about as much. So the thing that has really changed by going through this process is realizing, like you said, they're in this program to remember their child, to celebrate their child's life, to have a momentum, like you said, a new picture, a new memory with their child. And we create these big, huge, if you've never seen these paintings, they're huge, right? These big beautiful paintings for families that they proudly put on their wall because they do want to remember, they do want to talk about it, they do want you to say their name. And I heard somewhere that sometimes we're afraid about bringing it up, right? You maybe don't want to talk about someone, or say their name because you might make somebody else sad. Well, you know what? They're probably thinking about them already. So when you say their name and when you are a part of it and can share a memory or, just talk about them, then it helps the loved ones realize, okay, we all remember them. They're still a part of us. They're not forgotten. And I think that's like a really big thing. They're not forgotten. They're on your mind. They're on your heart. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the families say, that I'm already thinking about them nonstop. So you can't just it's not like I'm going to, they're going to be, reminded or something. It's in their body, is kind of the way I think about it. Like the loss becomes, just a part of your body. It's like a reverberation in your body that doesn't just go away so yeah, I think I agree with all of those as well. For those of you who aren't totally familiar with the project, it's another really cool thing about the project is that the project pays writers and artists. So when Amanda was founding the project, it was important to her that she not ask for our donated time, which as artists and writers, we know is pretty common, right? We also live in a culture that loves art, but it's difficult to make a living as an artist. So when you donate to the project, this is a project that is funded by donations. So when you fund a project, that money is going to the artists and the writers, which is pretty unusual and pretty awesome because she knows this is a project that understands the value of art, the way that art can function in our culture and our society, and believes that art is the way to change grief. That is one of the best ways to try to change this culture of grief. So that's one of my favorite parts about the project that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know. So I wanted to be sure to mention that. But for my last question, I wanted to sort of circle back to the word that you chose at the beginning. So just briefly share why you chose that word, just why that word came to you, and then we'll open it up for questions from people who are listening. And Justin, do we want to start with you? Because I know you have to perhaps leave a little early, so we can start with you if you'd like.
Thank you. I know I snagged Vanessa's word. There are a lot of words I could have used, and I snagged Vanessa's word too. I was self-conscious about using that word because I don't have an experience of grief in the way that the families in this program do. But there's something really healing about being able to, being trusted with the family's story and asked to make a piece of art from it is just, I don't know if I can articulate it. There's a way that you feel like the primacy of love as a healing force and as something that never dissolves or goes away. No matter what happens in this physical world, you feel like the love is there, and that I feel like if I allow myself best I can to be kind of a vessel for whatever wants to come through and become this painting, then love can come through and enter this painting. Like I really think about that in a tactile way. I want this painting to carry love into the family's home and like beam it out forever. And that's very personally healing for me in my own way, just to be some small part of that. I feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. That's probably the best I can do to explain that. It's just a very powerful, humbling experience to get to do this.
Thanks, Justin. Jessica, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. So my word was inspired. And I am so inspired by the families that enter into this program to share their stories, to go through this process of, processing their grief and being brave enough to put their story out there for people and to share it with me and the writers. I mean, it's incredible because it is a very personal thing. Grief is very, very personal. And I'm inspired by their strength. They don't want to have to be strong, right? Nobody wants to be in this position, but they're processing it and they are being strong for their kids on earth and their kids who aren't with them anymore. And that is just, it inspires me to be a better mom, a better person, because you really see things from all sides to realize like how thankful and grateful that we need to be for every day. And so that's just another way. I don't know, I'm just very inspired to take every day as it comes and, see things from kind of a different perspective from going through this process with my families. It inspires me to be a better artist so I can do better for them. So that's what it means to me.
Thank you, Jessica. Vanessa?
So I chose rewarding. And I hesitated, honestly, when I first chose it, because it kind of just sounds like it's a blanket. But then that's ultimately why I did kind of choose it, because, working with this program and working on this artwork is very rewarding. I have grown a lot as an artist. I've grown a lot as a person. I have healed. I have helped others heal, which, wow, that's really huge. And that really touches me in such a way. I just feel, like with what Justin said, I'm a part of something that's so much bigger than myself. And also just, emanating love through the artwork and knowing that these families, every time they look at it, they can feel the emotion that went into it, and it can help. It feels alive. At least that's my hope. And I just feel that it's rewarding for each of us artists, for the families, for the organization, and just for the community, and and for just the whole presence of, like you said, trying to make the topic of grief no longer as taboo as it had been before. So the fact that this program is set in place to kind of abolish that taboo sense of grief, just kind of brings it all into a very rewarding space for everyone. And that's my word.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah.
Lisa, can I say
go
one more?
ahead.
I don't want to overdo it, but I want to pick up on something Jessica said, which is, I think it makes me a better parent too, because I look at my kids and go, lots of things can happen, and they're here right now. And I find myself letting little things go and giving them more love and affection, like physical affection, because I've read these stories of real families. And so it makes me extremely grateful, and I find it precious. And I wish that we could all have that perspective, because it just makes me want to just appreciate their presence at all times. And I'm really grateful for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say my word was life-changing. And I was going to say, there's nothing that will change your life more than understanding that it's finite, that it will end. I mean, there's one thing we all know, and that's that we're all going to die. And yet it seems like we often live like we're not going to die. So when you work on a project like this, and death is a theme, one of its major themes, it reminds you on a very constant and real way that this is my one wild and precious life, as Mary Oliver would say. What am I going to do with it? this could be my last day. What if I, what if this is the last time I say something to this person? It just is it's just, instead of pretending it's not going to happen, or that it's not real, or that it'll never happen to someone at a certain age, instead it's this idea of like, nope, this is it. Like, and not to let that dampen or depress, or consume me with worry and fear, but to just lean into it. This is truly it. So what do I value? What do I care about? How am I spending my time to help align with those values? It's a constant chance for me to assess that. And so it has changed my life. It has changed the way that I do spend my time and the way that I interact with a lot of people, including my children as well. So yeah, I think it's, even though we all use different words, I think there's a lot of commonalities into how it's influenced us and changed us, and both as artists, but also as people. So that is the power of this project, and we're just so grateful to Wesleyan for hosting us and letting these stories. Each of the pieces in the library are accompanied with a small excerpt from the story. Most of the stories are a few pages long, so we can't include the entire story, but they have quotations from the story, and we try to match parts of the story that show up in the paintings, so that you can kind of see the process of story to art. So if you haven't checked it out yet, I really encourage you to. Also, all of the pieces that we've done for the project are now on our website, which is new. So go check that out. It's a gallery of all the pieces that we've created throughout the years, along with, I can't remember if the excerpt with the story is there or not, but you can check out all the pieces that we've created so far. And that will have to do until the book is published and out for everyone else to see. But so I think that's all I've got. I don't know if there are questions. Happy to hand it back over to you.
Well, I want to mention that if anybody wants to speak personally from the audience, you're more than welcome to raise your hand, and I can turn on your mic if you feel brave enough to do that. Otherwise, Q&A or the chat. I did want to mention, so there was one, thank you all for that beautiful discussion. There were so many things that I just want to let you finish your thought, but there's a million thoughts running through my head right now. I've been doing this program since November. We were supposed to have one in October, but the person who was going to do the discussion had an unforeseen family trauma happening, that she was dealing with the discussion of death right away, or right then and there. And what I thought was very interesting is she talks about death for a living, and all of a sudden she's inundated with this going on in her life very imminently with her own family. And it seems it doesn't matter what stage you are or how ready you are to have these discussions, it's always very hard. And you don't know how to approach it even with yourself or with other people. So the discussion about death and dying is always very complicated. I'm very thankful that we're all happy or all able to have this discussion, and that people attend these programs and are willing to have these discussions. It doesn't get easier. It just kind of changes, and you learn things that happen, new approaches with one person, and you learn not to do that with another person, but maybe that person is unresponsive to that type of thing. So I think that this is all hearing your various approaches to these artworks and to your writing is very inspirational on how we might be able to approach other people living or experiencing this grief. So I did want to say thank you for all of that. So anyways, if you have anything to add, I was going to find the Busy Bees gallery. I do see some wonderful stuff online. I did want to also add to the chat box. I'm hoping you can all see that now. That is our YouTube artist interview, Give Grief a Voice with Busy Bees. That does highlight some of the pieces in the exhibition. Again, you should come. It's a traveling exhibition going on. We'll have it now here at the library for the next week and a half. And there's a tissue box I've seen plenty of people were halfway through our tissue box that was brand new when I put it out. So people have certainly felt a little teary-eyed looking at those wonderful pieces that you all do and the stories that you create. So yeah, anything else anybody would like to add? It's so hard. And I will also add the Busy Bees gallery to the archive of the Dying Well series so that you'll have access to it even after this recording. It will also be available on our, probably down in the description below, so you can access it easily, as well as a link to the series in general, as well as Busy Bees. I want to thank you all for coming out today. I see that we don't have any questions or comments. I know that this is a complicated discussion, especially when it's being recorded. There's always a finite challenge with providing accessibility with kind of taboo, uncomfortable topics like this. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to turn off the camera in case anybody did want to mention anything off screen. So I hope you all have a fabulous evening.